The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this month's meeting. I am still waiting on the speaker to join, so hold with me for a moment. I'm reaching out to him on Twitter, so hopefully he'll respond here in a moment. I did see him posting things about it today on Twitter, so I know he knows about it. So maybe some miscommunication. If for some reason he does not show up, we will get this rescheduled, hopefully in very short order. So give me just a few minutes to see if we can raise him and get him on, or if we're going to need to reschedule. Thank you. I'll be back in just a moment. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now joining, reaching out to the speaker, he has not joined in yet. Not sure if there was some miscommunication or what, but we will definitely reschedule this if he doesn't show up in the next few moments, but we'll see if we can actually get him here in just a moment. So hold on, and we'll see what happens here in a moment. I'm reaching out to him on Twitter. He is responding to me on Twitter. Let me see what he's saying here. 1 second. And we'll see what he says about coming in or basically rescheduling. Okay, looks like work called him in. Oh, he says he will join in just a moment. So let's see if he was dragged into a job call, and he'll join in just a minute. So hold on, and we'll get Carlos here in a moment. He's work calls. Sometimes that happens to us. So we'll see what. So hang on just a moment, and we'll have Carlos on. He says he will be joining. So while we're waiting on him, let me go ahead and just kind of cover the past news right quick with you, so that when he comes in, we're not eating up any more of your time than usual. So the past community news for May 2020, okay, is what we have here. So all right, so first thing is past 2020 summits, and what it's going to look like. First of all, they are definitely still looking to have a meet in person with the new venue, but they're also talking about having an opportunity this year of having Past Summit 2020 as a virtual event. So if you want to sign up, please do. I would look forward to meeting you in Houston. That's where it is this year, Houston, Texas. So they are offering, of course, full refunds and everything if you do sign up, and then, or you can apply it to Summit 2021 if it did get canceled for whatever reason. Just FYI. Okay. If you are planning to attend, one of the things that you can do is that the 2020 pre-con sessions have been announced. You can learn about them there at that QR code. There are 2 full days of pre-cons, all day training. Chris Hyde's going to do one. I'm setting in one by Isaac Bengan. And then there are others that, in all different types of topics. So check it out. If you do plan on going to Pass Summit, you can go to the 3-day event or come in a couple days early and actually go to a pre-conference. I've gone to them in the past few years, and they are really phenomenal. You can learn a lot in a day. And normally you got some nice handouts and stuff to take with you to reference, which I've done many times. So. The other thing to realize, and of course you're on it right now, there is a lot of free training content going on. And one of them is basically you're getting some free content from Past Summit 2019. So check out and watch the best of Past 2019 and see what you can learn from there. There's a lot of free training there. And of course, there's a lot of other free training going on. So just check it out. If you have any questions, look on Twitter, hit me up. I can definitely tell you about just all kinds of free training going on right now during this pandemic that we're in. So, all right, and some of the free training coming up in the virtual groups, which you're in right now, one of them is, you can see right here some of the different groups, some of the different topics that are going on. In fact, of course, these were all May 6th. Here it is, May 8th, and going forward, but you can actually see many different things about that you might want to learn about. And just continuing on here, several different things. Interesting one down there at the bottom, if you're still using Profiler, then you can replace it with extended events. I'll be honest, I'm still one of those guys that does use Profiler. I will use extended events also, but I still just find Profiler so much faster to start up than extended events. But anyway, extended events really is the way to go. And continuing on, you will see some other training that your options. There might be a good one, understanding your different options on the Azure Data Platform by Joey D'Antano at the latter part of the month. And then Azure Data Factory, if you haven't learned that, that's basically the replacing of SSIS going up into Azure and stuff. So that's coming along. And Azure Data Studio, if you haven't used it, then there's another introduction to Azure Data Studio. I know that for myself, I am still not there. So it looks like we do have Carlos coming on. So one moment, we'll get him there. Let's see if he can get his mic off of mute. It looks like he does have it muted. So
I'm here. Tom.
There you go. Okay. Hi, Carlos. And
I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, you're okay. And then, ladies and gentlemen, there are your virtual groups that actually, and then if you're looking for a career or recruiting technically, there's a couple different things you can do. And so PASS definitely has lots of different opportunities. Here's all the different ways that you can connect with PASS and sign up for free memberships. And you're probably already PASS members because you wouldn't know about today except maybe by Twitter. And then if you signed up, you would definitely be a member. So with that, given the introduction, I'm going to actually pass it to Carlos. Carlos and I haven't officially met yet. We're friends through Todd Clehans in Denver, and Carlos, I believe you're out of Denver too, are you not?
Yes, I am. Yep,
Yeah,
you're correct.
that's what I was thinking. So let me change the presenter over to Carlos, and we will get this moving for you, and then I'll get the recording started also. So Carlos, you should be getting it, and then I'll let you know when I see your screen. And I
Yeah,
see your
just let me.
screen.
Yeah, I just need to switch the screens. There you go.
Yep, and
Can you see it now?
I can see your container, your window, your looks like Azure DevOps, or Data Studio, which we were just talking about, looks like.
That's correct. Okay, and right now I just switched to presentation mode. Can you hear me okay?
You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, that's awesome. I have more than 10 years of experience working with P, also a friend of Redgate. I happen to be a Guatemala SQL Server community leader, and yes, I do this work remotely. I do have help from the co-leaders that are local to Guatemala, but it's a great experience if you want to try to be a leader but not being in the actual place. It's possible. Speaking about some things I do, I wrote some technical articles for Redgate, Simple Talk, SQL Server Central, and MS SQL Tips as well. I represent my blog consulting company called DBA Mastery. You can find my blog there. I have some scripts, best practices, and some stuff related to Microsoft data platform. By the way, the slides, demos, and everything else from this presentation today are on my GitHub repository. Anyway, I would tweet the information later after we finish this session, but it's there already. But I think the most important part of this slide is my contact information. If you want to connect through LinkedIn, you can find me there. You can follow me on Twitter, ping me on Twitter. Or if you want to follow up after this presentation because you have questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email. My email is here, so that's the most important thing of this slide. All right, so enough about me. Let's move on to the agenda. This is what I have prepared for you today. Mainly three topics. The first one is containers, what and why. A brief definition of what a container is and why containers are so good to build immutable infrastructure solutions. Then I will talk about a quick overview more than anything else of the traditional versus contemporary software development practices, how SQL Server fits on each one of these practices. Finally, SQL Server containers and CI/CD pipelines, and this is going to be more than an overview of how the SQL containers um, role is on when using pipelines or being integrated to technologies like Jenkins or container platforms like Kubernetes. All right. Here's a few prerequisites for this session. I don't want you to complain to to Tom saying it was too technical. Actually, this session I delivered similar session for Past Summit last year, and it's a level 300, I guess. It requires some basic familiarity with some stuff like coding, infrastructure as a code, basic Linux stuff, containers, and so on. So just wanted to be honest with you guys up front, and there will be lots of demos. This is a demo-heavy presentation, so hopefully you will enjoy it. All right, so here's the first topic, and what are containers? And so they are commonly called the standard unit of software for a very good reason, and it's because a container image can have all those binaries, files, dependencies, and everything else that will make my application functional. Okay. Containers, a difference with VMs, share the machine's OS kernel, system kernel, sorry, driving higher server efficiency and more important, reducing the storage footprint and server licensing costs. They are cross-platform. So if I create a container today in macOS, I can run it. It will behave the same on Linux, Windows, or even on serverless services like Azure Container Instances that runs in the cloud. So now, why containers? For those that are new to the world of containers, there is an added value that containers provides over VMs or function as a service. One of the key things that they have as a special characteristic is speed. They enable you agile development. And that's because containers do not require to load an entire operating system per application, leading to very quick start and stop times, which is very convenient for developers or anybody else today, right? I am not saying containers are meant to replace virtualization technologies. They're just another tool you have there available in your toolbox that you can use whenever you have a software problem. You can leverage this cool technology and use them. Um, they are easy and simple, and it's because containers just includes the application and user space. As I said, they do not load an entire operating system. So that's very simple in terms of overhead and in terms of management as well, because you can manage containers through API tools using the Docker CLI, and those tools are basically easy, and they I would say that probably are easy to use and easy to learn. Okay. Finally, packaging, having to wonder, do I have all my dependencies, all my files, and everything else packaged into my application? We don't have to worry about that anymore. That's only possible because containers can use something special, a file where you can define those dependencies and everything else you need, and that file is called Docker file. I will have a few examples of that during one of the demos. So that makes things really easy for us. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Okay, so let's have our first demo and how to create a custom container. Let me switch. There you go. Okay, so here's a summary of what I'm going to be performing for this demo. I am going to be creating this custom container. I will spec some of the properties. I want to learn more about the container. I will get some properties of my SQL Server instance, and I will probably move on to download a backup from production. I'll put some later scenario there. I will show you some examples. I'll restore this backup. Then we are going to take a look at some special configurations that I have in place for this container. And finally, we are going to test the connectivity and do some cool stuff with some logins and some queries there. Okay. First thing I have to do is this. Just give me a second here. I need to put some timer on. I don't have it, so I want to make sure I don't run out of time. There you go. Okay, cool. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when using containers is to understand what do you have available to work with. Microsoft provide us multiple versions of images. We have one image for each one of CU available for SQL Server 2017 and 2019. We have containers on Ubuntu. We have containers on Red Hat. So I put this together. This URL is kind of a query you can use to get the information about what images you have at your disposal to work with these containers. As you can see, we have the version first, then we have the patch level, then the operating system and the version. The latest for Ubuntu on 2019 is available to use Ubuntu 18.04, which is really cool. And so you can use this curl command to get the list. That was for Ubuntu. Let's take a look for Redgate. Excuse me, for Red Hat. So the list is a little bit short because Red Hat SQL Server Containers was available for Red Hat starting from the 2019 version. That was a little bit different for Ubuntu because we have 2017 and 2019. All right. If you want to take a look and try this using PowerShell, I have included this command here. If you don't want to use curl, so you can have, you can use PowerShell to do it, and it's pretty much the same. Okay. Right, let's move on to something different, something cool here. This is my custom container, and I will do my best to explain what I'm doing here. I'm doing a lot of crazy stuff. The first thing I'm doing is creating some customized mount points for my data, for my log, and for my backups, for my logs and my backups. And I'm using some of the environment variables that are available for SQL Server and Linux, defining, okay, I want to use this mount point for my data, one for the logs, and this one for my backups. But if you can see here, those mount points doesn't exist on the container yet. But anyway, I am creating those mount points using something called volumes. I can create some persistent volumes on my computer and map those volumes into these mount points in my container. So you can see here I have my volume for data, my volume for log, and my volume for backups. So I will be expecting that once this container is started, for these mount points to be created and those volumes be used to keep this data persistent. But I'm also doing something else. I'm creating a shared folder between my computer and this container. This is a different kind of volume. It's not a persistent volume, it's just a shared directory between my computer and this container. Why? The reason is simple. I want to copy files. I want to download a backup from Azure, copy that backup, and restore that backup into a database in this container. So that's the reason why. And I can use it for any purpose. I can copy files, whatever, right? This is the image I'm using. So let's go ahead and create this container. Here we go. Oh, and what's going on with my keyboard? Okay, cool. All right, so my container is up and running. There is many ways you can learn more about your container, to learn about the status, the IP address, and I don't know, lots of information are there available for you with so many Docker commands. I have an article published on SQL Server Central, and that teaches you how to create some aliases, so you don't have to run a command over and over again. So just creating an alias like this, DKPSA, provides me with the name of my container and the status. So if you want to take a look, it's here. I will skip some of the comments here because that's for you to explore. It's not a big deal. As I said, just to get the IP address, the PID, and the status of your container. I'll move to something more interesting. And remember when I created my container, I didn't define how much memory and CPU I want to use, right? So that's not a good practice overall, but for a sandbox developer environment, that's okay. I am trying to learn how much memory do I have assigned for this container, and here's the quota, excuse me, memory and CPU. So here's the quota. As you can see, the quota is 0. Why? Well, it's easy. Containers will use as much memory and CPU they have available in the Docker implementation. I mean, if I define my Docker daemon that I want to use 10 gigabytes of memory out of 16 that are assigned to that box, containers are going to use those 10 gigabytes. Okay, and there is a very cool command that is called Docker stats that provide us with the actual utilization of CPU and memory here. You can see my container is using 700-ish megabytes of memory. The hard limit is 4 gigabytes, and that hard limit happens to be the 4 gigabytes that I have configured in my Docker. So I have a screenshot here. I don't want to, oh, what's going on? Why is it not loading? I just updated Visual Studio Code last week. Oh man, that was unexpected. But anyway, I can put it down here. Let me do it. It will take more time, but what I wanted to show you is that my current installation of Docker is using, let me switch screens for a moment. There you go. It's using just 4 gigabytes of memory. You can go to preference here, resources, and there you go. So 4 gigabytes, and my container is using 700 megabytes of those 4 gigabytes. If I don't have a quota, it's going to use as much as it can. So you have to be really careful with that. Here's more information about volumes, how to learn about how your volumes are presented to the container. This command is really cool because it shows a map between my current volume on my computer and the mount point in the container. We can see I have the log, the backup, and I also have this volume that is different. As I said, that's a bin volume that is just shared between my computer and the container. So there is more information here, more comments you can try out. And I'm going to move to something more interesting here. I am going to take a backup of my production source. So I have Azure Data Studio here. Obviously, I'm using Mac, so I can't connect using SSMS. Let me connect to Azure. I am going to connect to my quoted code production, and I will take this backup. Let's put the current time. So imagine this is your production source. In my case, I have to create a very small database because of time purposes, okay? But it depends of your environment. So let me go back to here. My backup was created on Azure. And so I have created a script that helps me downloading those backups from Azure. And this script is basically going to connect to my storage container. It's going to list all my backups there. And you can see this is the one I just took a few seconds ago, and it was downloaded to my computer. Okay, so because I created this shared directory between my container and my computer, I am expecting my container to have this backup on the share file system or mount point. Let's take a look. And indeed, I can see the backup here. I'm going to copy this backup name, and I'm going to move back to Azure Data Studio because I want to restore that backup. Let's save. Okay, so let's restore the backup. I'm going to connect to my custom container here. There you go. And I will change the name of the backup here. All right, so I'm ready to restore this backup. So let's restore it. And at the same time, because I will be restoring this human resources database, I'll run a couple of queries to make sure I have data for my employees or my dependents. So let's run it once, and it's done. So I was able to take a backup from a different source on Azure. By the way, my VM on Azure is using is Windows. So a backup from Windows is good to go on a container in Linux. So that's wonderful. All right, so let's move back to Azure Data Studio to Visual Studio Code. I want to show you something here, something really cool. Remember that I created this container with some specific configurations for my data, mount point, and my logs. So I am expecting to see an MDF on this mount point, and I don't know what's going on with this. It's not displaying the information the way I want, but there you go. So my MDF is there on my mount point for the data. Let's take a look at the log. So I'm expecting to see a log there. So yeah, it's there. So my volume worked as expected. Everything is good so far. But there is a problem here. If I want to move forward and use this container for development purposes, and this is not good because I have private information here. I don't want my employees' private data to be exposed. There are emails here, phone numbers, and everything else. So I have to sanitize this data. What I'm going to do next is connect to my custom container again, and I'm going to protect this data. If I want a developer to start using this container, I want to protect it. So let's move. What happened? All right, here you go. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this script is to create a custom login for my development team. I will grant them with access to this database. But at the same time, I am going to protect the information using dynamic data masking. I don't want them to be able to see the emails and everything that is private to my employees and their dependents. So I'm going to go ahead and going to create this, and it's done. So I have created this development login, and I should test it. As a good DBA, I should make sure things are working as expected. So I am going to show you this here. I'm going to connect to your human resources database. At this point, I'm using the SA login, okay? Because I'm the DBA, I just log in, but I created this development team login. So I want to switch the context to a different login. So we can do it using this command. And right now my session is set to the development team login. So I will expect to see the masked information, and it works. So whenever somebody from my development team connects, they will be able to query the information, but the information is protected, it's sanitized. They can see the names, they can see the phone numbers. So this is good to go. Okay. So let's take a look at the different demo here. All right, so far this scenario is looking good. Imagine you are thinking about creating your sandbox for development, and because this is kind of what you are looking for. It has all your files and your scripts and databases and everything else. So you decide to move on and create a customized image based on what I did manually. So what I'm going to do in this demo is to use the Docker file and build this image using scripts. So let's take a look at the Docker file for a moment. So the Docker file will use or reuse an existing image of SQL Server. In this case, 2016, excuse me, 2017 CU16. The version is irrelevant here. This is an old image I was using for my demos last year. I didn't want to change it because I don't want to run into risk for these demos to fail. So here's the environment variables that I defined before. The previous demo, these are the ones you always have to set to accept the end user license agreement, the SA password. But this time I'm including the agent, the SQL agent I want to be enabled, which you can do. But also I'm including a few variables here that are, I would say, custom. Those variables are for my own use. So the first one is wait for SQL. That will make sense later. I will explain you what this means. I have a different. I want to be able to build different environments. So I'm defining variable for that. I want to use a development environment. I want to create a stage environment. So I want to have control over that, and I can do it using a simple variable here. This environment variable is different. This is a good practice when using SQL command. If you don't want to write down your SA password over and over again in the scripts, you can use this environment variable called SQL command password and map this environment variable to your SA password that you define at the startup time. Okay. And here's the special thing I'm doing for this container. I'm installing Git in this container, and you will say, why? And this is so crazy, but trust me, it makes sense. So in my case, remember I have these scripts that has these logins that restore the database and everything else. So I created a Git repository for that because I want to maintain that code, be able to share with more people, maybe make some changes. So I created this Git repository for my scripts, but I also want to include some customized open source tools from the community. One of them are the SP who is active from Adam Mechanic, and the second is the SQL Server First Responder Kit from Brenosar. So whenever this container is created, it's going to pull those repos from GitHub, put it on my container, and I can use them. At the end of the day, those are just SQL scripts, so it's not putting a large amount of files into my container, right? Then I am copying some scripts, and because I have to perform a deployment of those scripts, I have created some kind of launcher to execute each one of these scripts the way I want. And this is the last step. And here I am kind of controlling what's going on when this container starts. And I am telling my container, okay, instead of starting SQL Server immediately, please run this entry point script. And that's what we need to take a look now. So let's take a look at my entry point. Let me go back here. That'll be easier here. Okay, so my entry point, as you can see, is very easy. So my entry point just have my SQL deployment. And remember that those two variables that I define on my Docker file, my environment and wait for SQL are here. So my SQL deployment is going to wait certain amount of time for SQL Server to start, and it's going to perform a deployment based on the environment I want to use. Let's take a look at this deployment script. This deployment script was created on using shell scripting. Here are the two variables I mentioned. I have created multiple functions here. The first function is called DVA init. This is just a matter to create a DVA database and then restore the database I want to restore. In this case, is the human resources database. Okay. Then I have an init for the SP who is active, and is nothing more than just creating the executing, excuse me, the SQL script that I am downloading from GitHub to this folder in my container. As explained before, I'm not putting the SA password anywhere here. You can see this is because I use that best practice I mentioned before. The same goes for the first one, the kit, the grants I want to push into my container, creating those logs and masking the data. So everything is happening there. So this flow is managed by this validation here. I have this flag. It's just a matter to check if this container was initialized or not. While I was creating this, I figured out that there was a problem with this model, because what happens if it runs every time I start the container? It was going to deploy these scripts over and over again. So I figured out that the best way to do it was creating a flag, like a file. If this file doesn't exist, my deployment is going to kick off. So it's going to start, it's going to wait for SQL to start, and then it's going to deploy the information. Okay, it's going to, excuse me, something's going on here. I'm getting call from work. My God. Okay, cool. All right, so depending on the environment, he's going to call one of these functions, DVA init, SP who is active, and grants, so on, and it's different for stage. Okay. I have some process to make sure there are no errors on the logs. And as I said, if this file doesn't exist, it's going to perform the deployment. In case if exists, it's just going to wait for SQL to start. Okay. So there is much going on. I understand that. But trust me, at the end of the day, once you control this and are familiar with what you are doing, it's easy. Okay, so let me create the custom image here. Okay, it's done. That was so easy because I already created this image before. So it's using the cache to recreate the image really quick. Let's list the images here. So my image called HR dev, HRDV dev stage is there. It was created an hour ago. I was doing some testing. So let's make sure my image works. So I'm going to create one container here. This container is going to be for development. It's going to wait 30 seconds for SQL to start, and then it's going to perform the deployment. So let's run it. There you go. So it would wait 30 seconds, and then it will start deploying my scripts and everything else. While this is going on, I think, Tom, are we good? Do we have any question? Maybe we can slide a couple of questions now.
Yeah, we got one question here. Is going to be basically on your password, how can you make sure your SA password, how can you make sure that it's not in the clear so you can source control the scripts and stuff? Or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do you have any suggestions
Okay.
there? I've got a couple, but I'll let you start.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a very good question. So I leverage this process here. As I said, this is a variable that's available with SQL command. So whenever you have SQL command, can be Windows, can be Linux, can be whatever, we can use this SQL command password to store the SA password as an any other variable. So you can control that using this process. I was using something different in the past. I had some kind of configuration file on my container, and I was reading that value out of the file and put it here on my script. But I figured out that that was not the best approach. So I learned that that was easy to do it without specifying the password here. As you can see, just it says just user say database, and that's it. So this is a practical way to do it, but there is more. And we can follow up. Whoever asked this question can ping me and we can discuss further about this. If you don't mind, I will move forward now because the deployment is complete.
Go ahead.
And we can leave the questions at the end. I have this natural pause so we can discuss a little bit. Okay,
Okay.
so moving forward, the container was created. I have a smiley face. Everything is good. So I would expect have my objects and anything else on my container as I showed you before. So I can take a look really quick here. Remember, I created the SP who is active, and so I'm connecting to my container to this port here, and I'm running in the DVA, the SP who is active here, so it's there. But this is not a practical way to test this. Okay, imagine I am satisfied with this image, so I tag the image and I push the image into my repository. Here's my repository on Docker Hub, and is the version number 10, and we can take a look at my existing images here. If, oh, I'm inside the container, excuse me. Okay, so this image already exists on my repository. You can learn a lot from your repository using JSON. Here is some example of how you can query it. And this is the last image created on my repository, is the number 48. But for demo purposes, I am going to move forward and use this 10 version. I am going to show you this scenario, and this is really cool. For shooting. So imagine you're a small shop and you need to have some place to start some development. Azure Container Instances is a really good solution. It provides you with serverless um, micro-billing solution. You are built by the second, where you can start containers on the cloud. I have created one container before, and it's called my development SQL 01. Here's an example of how to create a container if you want to try out. And I already did it because of demo purposes. It takes like 1 minute to create, and it's here. Let's learn about my container. My container should be there, up and running, and I should be able to connect, and it's here. So let's make sure I can query information from there. Yep, everything is okay. So let's imagine this scenario. I have this junior developer that is called Carlos. So Carlos was asked to work on something and make some changes to the application. So Carlos is going to run some updates. Let's open those queries here really quick. ACI developer and ACI developer. There you go. Okay. So Carlos wants to change some of the addresses on the locations table of the HR database when the location is 1400. Okay. So Carlos is going to run this update. So he initiated the update and it's good. So he said, okay, I'm going to check if my change was applied. So I'm going to connect to locations and wait for my results. But what's going on? why I'm not getting any rows back. So Carlos decides to call his buddy Carlos, or Carlos, the DBA, and he said, Carlos, I'm using your image that you created for us to start our development, but it's not good. I have this problem. I'm running some updates, and my data is not. I don't have any rows returned. So because I was proactive with this image, and I created. Remember, I created this. I deployed. That's the right word. I deployed a bunch of open source tools as SP who is active, and I can instruct my developer and say, okay, do me a favor, use these Azure Data Studio notebook that I created for you, and run the commands and follow the instructions I put for you there. So the very first instruction is, let's make sure there is activity. So he runs this, he starts to execute some of the commands on the notebook. And he said, yes, indeed, there is some activity going on. I can see there is an update there. Okay, so, but something happened really quick here. Let me do it again. It's not going to work. All right. So he said, yes, there is some activity going on there. Thanks to you that you put those in place. So do me a favor, run the number 3, and we will learn what long running queries are there. Maybe there is an issue. So my junior developer started to run this, and he said, yes, there is an issue there. Apparently there is a blocking. The session number 52 is blocking my update, and no, the update is blocking my select statement. And so I can decide. If I am the DBA, I can decide, okay, can you please save this notebook and send me the information through email? Or he can even shoot an email with screenshots. But it's really easy for us that we have experienced as DBAs that the problem here is that my junior developer was running an update and he never closed the transaction. So that's why the select statement was never returning in the rows. But this is just a quick scenario for me to show you that once we create these containers with all these tools and everything else, we're good to go and reuse it anywhere. Okay, so let's move to a different thing now. Let me go back to the presentation. All right. All right, so the next topic is SQL Server as an application component. And well, this topic is about comparing the traditional practices with the contemporary practices. When using the traditional practice, it is really common to have shared environments, which sometimes is not a good idea due to the risk to potential project delays that can be caused by unexpected resource contention problems. Traditionally, SQL Server is everywhere in multiple environments like development, stage, QA, and it becomes a monolith service that has to be treated as a production style environment. And that's because it has to be maintained, it has to be supported, and if a DBA is responsible, that will be a time-consuming task. Moreover, if he or she he's responsible to keep the data in sync between production and these other environments. And also, when running a deployment on shared environments is kind of, I would say, challenging because we have to integrate the development with the operations team, and that's challenging due to the time that we have to spend to coordinate the effort to get the approvals for the changes and everything else. So I'm not I'm not trying to say bad, but it's not the fastest approach out there. Okay. Contemporary practices. Organizations are moving towards containerized application for what is very likely that they will include SQL Server as part of a new development stack. Microservices has changed the way we develop and ship software products nowadays. The first thing we have to understand is that SQL Server is just a component of our application. It's not a server. It probably has the server word in the name, but it's not that pet that we used to care and have around us. It's just cattle, okay? DevOps demands agile and automated ways to build pipeline for development stage or production environment. And that's kind of challenging to achieve when using a monolith development practice because developers are in the need of simple runtime workplaces where they can have a SQL Server instance integrated as any other component of your application. And more importantly, they want to be able to manage their infrastructure through code. And there is when Docker and Kubernetes comes to light and really shine because they provide us that portability and agility to run modularized application on premise or even the cloud. Okay. So speaking about integrating a application with my database, we have tools like Docker Compose. Docker Compose is a tool available with Docker that allow us to define services or run multiple containers using a declarative YAML file where we will define the characteristics, the configurations for our services. And then it will be just a matter to run a single command line instruction to have this environment up and running. So let's move on to a manual integration of my database with my application using Docker Compose. Let me close this down and this down as well. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do, as I said, I am going to use Docker Compose to have my development stack up and running. I will have my application back end, my application front end, and my database up and running on my development environment. Excuse me. And I have a few things here to highlight. The first one is that I am able to control how I want to my data to be displayed. I have a couple of settings here. If I want to be the admin and I want to be able to see the private data, I can do it as a DBA or I can do it as a developer. This is the folder structure. If you want to take a look, there is a Docker file to build the back end, the front end of this application. By the way, I got some help from Giovanni De Leon. He's a John developer from Guatemala, very talented. We work this remotely. Obviously, I created the database image and he just took that image into his Docker environment and started building this application. It was awesome. All right, so let's take a look at my Docker Compose. There you go. And I am not in the right directory. And all right, it should be there now. Okay. All right. So here's my Docker Compose. My Docker Compose has basically three services: my front end, my back end, and my database. I already have these images created. As I said, you can build those images on the fly if you want. The Docker files are there, but because of time purposes, I have my front end here. This is the more important here of my Docker Compose. This depends on instruction. It's going to create some kind of link between my front end and my back end application. And the same goes for my back end with my database here. So Docker Compose creates some kind of internal network that helps my containers to be able to see each other. I am just doing a normal deployment here using the images I created already, the one for my database. So I would expect my environment to be up and running and have my whole application stack for me to take over. So I'm going to run the Docker Compose up. It's going to execute that YAML file for my Docker Compose, and it will wait 40 seconds for SQL Server to start. And I think we can have another quick question now while this is going on. So Tom, if you have any other questions there, we can take it now.
Yeah, I do have some other ones. Can you define temp DB to be to a different volume in a container?
Yeah, there is a variable for the system databases, if I am not wrong. Let me take a look here. That information is here. Let me go back.
I thought there was a way to do that, but I may be mistaken.
Yeah, there is a way. It's there, but I happen to open the wrong file. So it is here. There you go. If you go and take a look at the Linux environment variables, there is a way you can control the system databases and you can create a different volume for that. I don't have that information in top of my mind, but it's here. The
Okay.
same way I was able to manipulate my user databases, I can do it for my system databases. It is here. If you happen to download these demos, or if I can, I don't know if I can copy and paste. I can do it at the end. If you want, I can copy and paste this URL and they can take a look at there because the information is documented there.
Okay, and then one other quick question, and then you get back to it, is will your demo Docker scripts be available? And I think you said they would on your GitHub site, right?
That's right. I think this repository is private at the moment, but it's there. If you go to GitHub, DBA master, you will find my repositories there. I have these talk presentations, and every single one of my presentation in the past is there. I do have the past Summit 2019 here, and these scripts were taken from there, so you can take a look at here as well. But anyway, I will make sure to update it once this presentation is over. I apologize that I didn't have a chance, but it will be here. So if
Oh,
you go to GitHub and look for my repository, it's there.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so getting back to the presentation here, my Docker Compose is up and running, and it says that the instance was my container for databases was created and integrated with my application. Let's make sure that's true. All right, so I will jump to a different terminal here, and what I'm going to do here is just to perform API call to the locations. And I will like to see if this crawl is going to return me information. And it needs to return information indeed. I can see the locations. That means that my application is working fine. I can even query my database here, but that's irrelevant now. Let's connect to my application locally. And there you go. So my application is up and running. I have my back end, my front end, and everything else running here. And I should be able to see my employees' information protected. So cool. Everything is working the way I'm expecting. So that's a very easy way to, get your development stack up and running in just a single line, single line instruction. Single command line instruction, sorry. Let me jump here and kill this Docker Compose because it's going to kill my computer. I don't have more resources. And let's go back to the presentation for a moment. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. I think we can make it. All right, so the next topic is SQL Server containers and CI/CD pipelines. I would like to start defining what is CI/CD. Okay, CI/CD is just a method to frequently deliver apps to our customers by introducing automation into the stages of the application development. CI stands for continuous integration, and it means the process while my changes or my development team is making changes, committing changes into a repository, and this repository triggers an automated build. This build notifies people saying, I am creating a new build, I'm running a set of testing, making sure the build is correct, and it's going to analyze the results. If this process is successful, my CI part will be done. So my continuous integration will be finished, and then comes the time for my CD step to take over. CD stands for continuous deployment, and it's very easy. It's just taking that code that was already built and tested in the previous step, and it's going to be delivered and deployed into my production environment. That's it. Okay, sounds easy, but it's a little bit different for databases. Why? Because databases are not stateless. Websites are stateless, databases are stateful. So CI/CD from the data perspective changes a little bit. Okay. The first thing we need to make sure is our data to be persistent. And that's why I show you that volume example. Remember, to make sure my data is persistent no matter what. If my container is stopped and restart again, my data will be there. I need to make sure to protect my private data. I might need to create data sets, different data sets for my development environment, for my QA environment, and sanitize the data or reduce the data set. So many things comes to light when doing CI/CD for databases. But the most important thing is that I need to make sure I am choosing the right approach for my scenario. Okay, and luckily for us, we have many tools are available to make this happen. The very first one I have here is the Docker file and the entry point. Remember the demo where I was manipulating how the SQL Server starts, and I have these entry point scripts that deploys my database. So that's a way to do it. We can use SQL command, SQL package to do it. We can even start our container, use ADS, Azure Data Studio, SSMS, connect to our container, and deploy the scripts from there manually if you don't want to do it automatically. There is other ways to do it. And Entity Framework, SQLize, and Django are ORM type solutions where my application will perform a database migration whenever it deploys the application. I'm not talking about migrating from SQL 2016 to 2017. I'm talking about deploying scripts. That's the way it's called, the database migration. And let me tell you this, Flyway is the best tool out there to perform database migrations. I'm working on a session dedicated to this topic, how to use database migrations with Flyway. Hopefully I'll get that done in the near future. But for now, I will stick to the first approach. But I just want to let you know that there is many options and you will choose what is right for you. Okay? And there is an option when automating pipelines or using CI/CD, we have Jenkins. Jenkins is an open source automation server and that provide us those pipelines. Pipelines are not more than a set of or a collection of jobs that brings the software from version control into the hands of the end users by using automation tools. Okay, here's a typical example of pipeline for development. I have my happy engineer using Azure Data Studio, Visual Studio Code, pushing changes into my GitHub repository. Jenkins is going to take over from there. It's going to build a new image. It's going to push that image into Docker Hub. So my happy engineer can have that image available for him to take over and him or her to be able to do some testing, introduce, I don't know, create a Docker Compose and introduce the early adopters of the application to make some testing. Okay, so let's have a demo on how to perform a CI with Jenkins. Let me go back to Visual Studio Code. This is going to be a short demo, but interesting.
While you're
Go ahead.
pulling that up, does that work with also with Azure DevOps, CI/CD?
Great question. Yes, so CI/CD, I would say there's many options. You can use Azure DevOps, you can use GitLab, you can use Jenkins. I said it's a personal choice. I use Jenkins for a specific. My biggest decision was to stick with open source and being able to use containers. So I'm using Jenkins in a container in Azure, and it's open source. So, but anyway, Azure DevOps has a free tier. I think they have like a free package for developers. There is many options there. I
Yeah,
thought it was easier for me to do it here with Jenkins.
yeah, Azure DevOps, you can get it for free up to 5 people. So,
Right. Okay,
okay.
great. Cool. So here's my folder structure for Jenkins. Pretty much the same as the previous demos where I have this DVA folder, my entry point, my deployment. But there is a slight change here. I have a Jenkins file. And what is a Jenkins file? Let's take a look. A Jenkins file is nothing more than a declarative Groovy language file that is going to create this job, if you will, in Jenkins that is going to perform the task I am asking Jenkins to take care. In this case, I have a few environment variables here. The first one is my registry. I am using some plugins in Jenkins for Jenkins to be able to use my Docker Hub registry. Then I am cloning my GitHub repository into my workspace in Jenkins. Then I am building my image, pushing my image, and removing the last image because I don't want to waste space on my container of Jenkins. So pretty much that's it. The cool thing about this is that my Jenkins file is part of my GitHub repository. So my GitHub repository has this Jenkins file, and whenever I trigger a commit and push on GitHub, I create a webhook. So Jenkins is going to automatically create a new job and build a new image for me. Okay. So I have a couple of things here to show you, but I won't have much time. In my case, in this scenario, remember I have this deployment and I have these tools that I have created. I pull it from GitHub and I want to introduce something new. I want to introduce a job that allows me to collect data using SP who is active, and it's going to store all the information, or excuse me, all the activity going on in my SQL instance into a table. So this is pretty much what I'm doing on my new deployment. I'm changing version. I used to have the version 1. Let me see. Yep. So version 101, and I want to switch to version 2, excuse me, 2.0. So I am going to perform that change here really quick. I'm just renaming files here to old and new. Okay, so done. I have my version 2 ready to go. I'm going to push my changes into my GitHub repository really quick here. There you go. And it's pushing the change now. I will connect to Jenkins. And I will expect a new job to kick off. Yep, so I have a job 54 that is kicking off right now. Remember the part that I mentioned that you can even integrate your CI/CD pipelines with notifications and cool stuff like that, emails if you want. Well, I happen to make some experimentation around Jenkins, and I figured out a way to notify users through Microsoft Teams. So if you're using Microsoft Teams, for example, this pipeline is going to notify my users in my teams whenever a new build happens. So let me put that in my desktop. So my Jenkins is happening, my Jenkins build is happening here. Let's take a look really quick. Let's go to a console output. And there you go. It's doing exactly what I asked, to create a new image, including whatever changes I made. And I think it's done. That was real quick. And yeah, 54 was successful. Excuse me, I'm jumping back and forth. It took around, I don't know, like a minute to do it. And let me show you my teams. There you go. So I got instant notification on Microsoft Teams that a new build with Jenkins was created. And I can even click on my build here and it takes me to my dashboard. I can see the output and everything else. This is really cool. Okay, so that's it for this demo. And I will jump back to a presentation. All right, so moving on to a different approach now. So that was with Jenkins. What about Kubernetes? And what is Kubernetes? I will do a 1-minute summary of what Kubernetes is. I will do my best because this is a really large topic. So Kubernetes is an portable, extensible, open source platform that helps me to manage containerized workloads and services, facilitating my life, doing pretty much everything using declarative configurations. I have to use this declarative model using YAML files, and I can make deployments, and I can configure the way I want my pods to. I don't know how many pods or replicas do I want for each of my deployments. Kubernetes has a master, it's kind of a brain. We have nodes available, and as it said, we have deployment. So pretty much that's it. It's a container orchestrator platform that makes sure my containers are up and running according to what I define on my desired state. Okay, and so here's an example of a stage pipeline, a little bit different. I have my happy engineer using Visual Studio Code, pushing changes into Jenkins. Jenkins is going to build the images into Docker Hub. But now I'm introducing Kubernetes as part of my CD because I want to deploy stuff to a different environment. So I'm using AKS, in my case, Azure Kubernetes Services. So my happy engineer is able to use Microsoft Azure to manage this Kubernetes cluster, and he will be able to expose those deployments to my final users. So if I go back to my demos here, so I think it's demo time. Yep. So I'm going to perform a CI/CD using Jenkins. Just let me close this down. I think we're still on time. Is that correct, Tom?
Yeah, we went an hour and 15 and you were a few minutes late. So yeah, we probably have another 10 minutes probably.
Okay. All right. That's cool. I still have time. All right. And I apologize for joining a couple minutes late. All right. So here we go. This is my Kubernetes environment. So I have this cluster that is called Apollo Stage. I have a few nodes. This is not a big Kubernetes cluster because it's just for stage. So, but before jumping into Kubernetes, let me show this structure. So it can be overwhelming because I have so many things here. I have my deployments, I have my persistent volume, and I have my services. But the reason why I have all this information here is because in case you want to follow up and perform a deployment, I wanted to make sure you have those files with you. So if we explore this folder, everything is here, deployments and everything else. Okay, so it's a bit overwhelming, but at the end of the day, it's easy. I have some pods living on this Kubernetes cluster. I have my backend. I have 2 replicas for my backend and 2 replicas for my front end. I have a persistent volume claim for my database. In this case, it's 4 gigabytes. It's small, but it's using managed premium. There is a standard and managed premium for the PVC or persistent volumes in Kubernetes available for Azure. In Azure Kubernetes services, so it's up to you to choose. I choose the managed premium because it's faster. I have some deployments here. My back-end deployment is living here, my front end. So you notice I don't have a database deployment or pod living on this Kubernetes cluster yet. But I do have a service. I have my back-end, my front end, and my database service here. The reason why I created a service is because sometimes it takes a couple minutes to assign public IP when deciding to expose the IP of the service to the internet. This is not a good practice. I'm doing it because I don't want to use VNet and very complex things for demos. So it's up to you. How do you want to manage that? But anyway, I just created this service beforehand, so I don't have to deal with that during the demos. All right. Um, if this is pretty much the same as the previous demo with a small change. So here's my pipeline, my Jenkins pipeline, the same. I'm building the image, I'm pushing the image, but I'm doing something different because I'm creating a new image and pushing this image on the fly. I want to perform deployment in Kubernetes using the image I am creating here on this pipeline. So I have my deployment. Let's take a look at the database deployment for a moment. And I'm using this version variable here, and I am replacing that version variable inside my deployment with the build number that is going to be created on Jenkins. Okay, so to make things dynamic. And then I have this step where it's going to apply the change into Kubernetes using the deployment. And I have a user called Jenkins robot. This Jenkins robot is just was created beforehand, and it's able just to make deployments. It cannot delete a pod or delete a node. It's up to you. You can make namespace. You can create namespaces. You can. Kubernetes is a really powerful platform, so there is many things, many customizations you can put in place to make sure your deployments are secure. In my case, I just created this robot just to make deployments, and that's it. Okay, so Let's move back to here. Um, this is a very typical case. I want to update my image. I was using CU15, and then I want to use a new version. I want to use the version CU16. So I'm going to make the change to my Docker file here, and let's take a look. Yep, it was 15 before, and now it's 16. I'm just updating the SQL Server version here. So let's make a change here. Let's push into my GitHub repository, and everything is up to date because I make no changes. I was doing some testing before. Let me force this. Um, let's put in the next additional space. There you go. All right, that's a very silly change there. Okay, so in this case, I didn't created a webhook for this deployment because I wanted to show you live. So my latest deployment was the build, excuse me, was 48. So we'll push a new one, new build. So 49. So we'll expect my container image on Kubernetes to use the build number 49. Right now it's building the image in Jenkins, but you can see the steps here. Build an image, pushing image, excuse me, updating SQL Server image version, applying the deployment into Kubernetes, and the last step is to remove the image on Jenkins. So if I go back here, my deployment is not yet created, right? Because Jenkins is taking care of the building right now. This is going to take 1 minute. Um, let's see, 17. Oh no, just created the image. So pushing the image should take seconds. So we'll be good to go and check on Kubernetes in my Kubernetes cluster and see that deployment happening. There you go. Okay, it's done. So the build number 49 is done. Let's take a look here. Let's jump to Kubernetes. Let me clear the screen really quick. And this is the last demo, so I think we're on time. All right, so take a look at this. My deployment is using the build number 49. That's expected, right? This is what I wanted. Let's take a look at the pods. Now I have this additional pod, and it's being created at this moment is my database. I want to learn more about this pod, so I am going to describe what's going on. Let me zoom out. There you go. Okay, so right now, a volume, excuse me, and the scheduler just assigned my container to this node on my AKS agent pool is the node 0 or node 1, and it just attach a volume to my container. So I will expect to see my container to start being created. And right now, I think it was created and it was just started. So let's take a look at the logs. And there you go, it's happening. So I'm glad this is working. So I think we have to wait like 40 minutes, 40 seconds, excuse me, for SQL Server to complete its scene for my deployment for stage to be completed, and it's happening now. HR database is being restored. It's creating the first responded kit, and the new jobs that I include as part of these deployments are done. So it's done. That was quick. Right. I can make sure this is working fine. Let me jump a little bit quick here. There you go. I'm going to query my API, make sure I have locations. Yeah, it's responding. Let's take a look at my front end hosted on Kubernetes. There you go. It's up and running. It takes a little bit of time to display the information sometimes, but it's good. Good to go. So remember I created this new thing for monitoring because this is a stage environment. So I want to make sure I can keep track of what's going on there whenever a performance problem is happening. Let me show you that really quick. Terminal number 4, and let's connect. Just let's explore my Kubernetes cluster from here. All right. So if I go to a SQL agent here in Azure Data Studio, I can see a job that was created. This job is running every, I don't know, every minute, and it's supposed to keep track of what's going on my Kubernetes cluster. So whenever, and on my, on my SQL Server container. So any activity going on and there is an issue or blocking or whatever, I can just query those tables that I created and that are here. If I want to take a look, there you go. So I want to query those tables, and this is the information about the SQL Server instance. My agent is running. I think right now SP who is active is not going to track anything because there was nothing happening at the time the job was running. But anyway, it's there for me. That's kind of what I have for this demo. A quick review what I presented to you guys today. Containers are multi-platform. Container that was created on Mac OS run the same on Linux as I show you today, even serverless services as Azure Container Instances. SQL Server, when using containers or CI/CD pipelines, SQL Server is just another component. Is that component that provides me the database functionality. That's it. It's not a server anymore. There's many open source tools you can use to leverage this technology and create your development environments. CI/CD pipelines. I briefly explained to you what is CI and the continuous integration and continuous deployment and how that cycle goes on. And so very brief examples how it works for databases. And obviously DevOps. It's a big thing. It's a cultural thing. It's not a technology. It's something that in my humble opinion, come to change the way we used to do things. Here's a summary of the technologies I used during this presentation: Docker, Jenkins, Azure Kubernetes services, Kubernetes, of course, Azure Data Studio, .NET Core, and so on. So I think it's time for a few questions. Tom, can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Do
I
we
can
have
hear.
questions?
Yeah, I can definitely hear you. So one of them is, so Docker Compose is rerunnable, right? That is, the outcome would always be the same even after multiple reruns?
That's correct. Yep. And there is many options for Docker Compose. You can even create or build the images on the fly. You can reuse images that are already created and pull it from an existing repository, and you can rerun it as many times you want. If I go back right now to my demos and rerun the Docker Compose, it will start a new instance, if you will, on my stack, and that's it. And you just take a couple of comments to put it off and put it down.
Okay. So he says, may I ask if you've seen Kubernetes used for production databases for on-premises environment yet?
For on-premises, yes, a few. Go ahead.
Okay, all right.
I know.
And
I thought you have a follow-up question, but yeah, but uh, this is a complex question because Kubernetes is a very extended platform and requires a little bit the learning curve. I would say is not easy, right? It takes a few months to become very familiar with the technology. I would recommend to use managed solutions as Azure Kubernetes services because you don't have to worry about upgrading the Kubernetes cluster. You don't have to worry about the storage and presenting the volumes to all the nodes and make sure everything is right. This platform is very complete. I mean, Azure Kubernetes services. It doesn't matter to put a couple of clicks on the portal and make scale your cluster. You don't need to build a new VMs to be part of those nodes. It's really easy to manage. And I do have a presentation about Azure container instances. I mean, Azure SQL containers in Azure. I gave that presentation a couple of weeks ago, and it's there. And I have a few examples how to use AKS. But yes, it's an option, open source, of course, Kubernetes, but you have to invest some time building that robust infrastructure to support your nodes and everything else.
Okay. All right. As we mentioned before, and you can hit me up if you want to, but all of Carlos's demos and stuff are going to be on his GitHub. So you've got his Twitter and handle there and GitHub information. So if you have any questions, you can definitely hit me up and we can get back in contact with him. This session was recorded, so I will be putting it up on YouTube tomorrow. Carlos, thank you for a very good presentation. I appreciate you coming by. And then there looks like all of his different references. There's so much to learn about containers still.
Yeah,
If you're not on the train, you better get on the train, because I personally think probably within 3 to 5 years that everything's going to be everything new will probably be on containers and very little VMware stuff or Hyper-Vs and stuff like that. So
that's correct. Yeah, and
that's
then I have some. Sorry, go ahead, please.
yeah, and that's an opinion, not a, maybe a prophecy, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, right?
Well, it's happening. I mean, for stateless databases are moving slowly, but it's getting there. I have a few YouTube recording, previous recordings from some sessions. If you want to take a look, there's one for Microsoft Azure, having all your containers in Microsoft Azure, building images on the fly using Azure, Microsoft Container Registry. Some articles about that topic, some are about using Python with containers, some crazy stuff I have done in the past. So if you want to take a look, I invite you there. And as you said, there is a lot of references. I put some good courses there, good books that you can take a look if you're interested to get on this train and learn about containers.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to get on the train and try some things out. I use encryption quite heavily, so I want to see how it all interacts with always encrypted TDE, etc. So it'd be interesting to
Great.
see what that looks like. So, all right, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, and look for an email with the recording. Come join us next week. We're going to have another session going, and please check virtualization.pass.org, and you can sign up for the next session, and there's another one in June. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you next time.
All right. Thank you.